Hello everyone and welcome to another video that is going to help you with your academic English. Now, my name is Kieran, as you may know, and today we are going to focus on editing and proofreading, which are two essential stages of academic writing. So, many students believe that once they finish writing their assignment, their work is complete, it's done. However, strong academic writing does not just end with that first draft. In fact, the real improvement often happens after you have finished writing. So this means basically polishing your work after you have finished it. And this is essential for truly impactful communication. So at higher education, remember that clarity and accuracy directly influence your marks. So even if your ideas are strong, if you have any errors in grammar or your structure is unclear, well, this can reduce the effectiveness of your argument. So in this session, we will explore the difference between editing and proofreading. We're going to practice identifying some common errors that students make. And then we're going to develop those strategies that will really help you to improve your grades. So without any further ado, let's have a look at what the differences actually are between editing and proofreading. So it is actually important to distinguish between editing and proofreading because they're not exactly the same thing. Editing focuses on improving your ideas and structures. So it's best to think of it as the kind of the bigger questions. These are the ones that are being solved. Those issues are being solved when you're editing. Right? So generally, editing is if you're trying to make your argument clearer, if you're trying to make your paragraphs more logically organized. You know? Does each paragraph have a clear topic sentence? Is your reasoning strong enough? Things like that. Okay, so it's big picture stuff. Whereas proofreading, on the other hand, focuses on those surface level errors. These are things like grammar, spelling, punctuation, formatting, etc. So proofreading happens after editing. You finished your work. First of all, you're editing to make sure that the ideas all run smoothly, etc. Then proofreading is that kind of last thing that you're going to look at, the spelling, the grammatical changes, just before you submit. Because there's no point correcting your grammar in a paragraph that you then later delete or rewrite. So you've got to make sure that your ideas are correct first before checking the spelling, the grammar, punctuation, etc. So it's best to think of editing as improving the quality of your ideas, and proofreading is then polishing your language afterwards. So now we're going to test your understanding. So I'd like you to have a look at these different factors here, and I want you to decide whether these tasks are editing or proofreading. Now, do not rush, and maybe think about your reasoning when you select your answers. So the aim is not only to choose editing or proofreading, but also to understand why. Because the distinction is important because many students really only focus on proofreading, checking those small errors. And that sometimes means that you are forgetting about the bigger errors of the organization, idea, progression, etc. Okay? Editing also has a much bigger impact on your grade than purely proofreading. Okay? So take a couple of minutes, maybe pause the video here, think about whether these are editing or proofreading factors. And then we're going to check your answers and find out why. All right, so hopefully you've had a look at these. You've chosen whether they are editing or proofreading. So let's see if you are correct or not. So this is what we have here. So let us go through the answers together. Now, correcting spelling mistakes. This is very obviously proofreading because it is looking at those surface level errors. Now, rewriting a sentence to make it clearer, talking about clarity, this is editing because you are trying to improve the clarity of your writing. Now, the next thing, checking subject-verb agreement. Is it he go or he goes? Well, this is quite obviously proofreading, okay? Because it's looking at grammatical changes. Now, improving the topic sentence of a paragraph, this is editing because it is strengthening the structure of your arguments of your paragraphs. Okay. Now, removing repeated ideas, this is editing as well. This is improving the structure of your arguments, so this is editing. Fixing punctuation errors like full stops, commas, etc. This is proofreading, okay, because this is coming after your ideas are solid and in stone. Now, reorganizing paragraphs to improve flow. This is obviously editing, okay, because this is more about the structure, organization of your ideas, okay. Also, something that is editing is changing from formal to academic language. Okay, this is more about the general flow of your assignment, so that would be editing as well. Checking the referencing format. This is obviously proofreading. You're looking for those. It's more about, is your bracket here? Should you have a comma, etc. Those are the surface level, not really about your arguments at that point. So it needs to be proofreading. And lastly, replacing weaker verbs for stronger ones. This is editing because you are trying to strengthen your argument. Okay. So at the end of all this, remember that you've finished your assignment, so to speak. Your editing comes first to change the structure and organization of your ideas. Proofreading is what comes later when you feel like you are ready to submit. So let's think about why editing and proofreading are important. Well, they are important for these three specific reasons relating to credibility, clarity, and engagement. So first, credibility. Remember that your errors can make your work appear rushed or careless. And academic writing, for better or for worse, reflects your own professionalism. Now, secondly, let's talk about clarity. Your reader, who is usually your lecturer, really shouldn't have to struggle to understand your meaning. If they struggle to understand their meaning, they're going to struggle to give you a good grade. So clear writing demonstrates that you have clear thinking. Now, third, engagement. If a reader, for example, your lecturer encounters repeated errors or some vague language or something like that, they may lose confidence in the strength of your argument. So in short, if you have strong editing and proofreading, this directly supports higher academic performance. So let's look at this in practice. Here you have two short paragraphs. I would like you to read them carefully and then discuss which of them would receive a higher mark, and also why. Now, don't just focus only on grammar. Consider also vocabulary, clarity, the tone of the language, and also the strength of the argument. Think like a marker. What would you reward and what would you criticize? So take a couple of minutes, have a look at both of them, look at the pros and cons, the strengths and weaknesses, and decide which one would get the higher grade and why. And then we'll check the answers afterwards. Okie dokie, so hopefully you paused the video and you are ready and aware of what the answers could be. So, I imagine most of you have said that paragraph B would receive the higher mark. Well, that is true because paragraph A contains some grammatical errors, such as subject-verb disagreement. But paragraph A also uses some vague phrases like many things, change things in many ways. Your role as an academic is to describe what those many things are, to describe what those many ways are. Okay? You shouldn't leave it up to your reader to know, to understand, to imagine what those many things in many ways are. It is your role. Okay? In comparison, paragraph B is grammatically accurate, doesn't have those issues with subject-verb agreement. Paragraph B is also more precise and has a more academic tone. It uses phrases like significant role, negatively affect academic performance, things like that. So, this example shows that both proofreading and editing matter. Grammar errors can reduce your marks, but also vague language and weak arguments can also reduce your marks as well. So you need to do both proofreading and editing, or in chronological order, editing and proofreading, in order to improve your final grade. So here are some practical techniques to help you with both of those things. Now, remember, you can use grammar check and spell checks. These come with most software programs. You know, Microsoft Word has grammar check and spell check. They can help you to identify obvious mistakes, but remember that they are not perfect. Don't rely on them completely. You know, they can have false positives, false negatives, etc. Okay, so don't rely on them completely. Now, another effective way to proofread or to edit your work is to read it aloud. And this is extremely effective because when you read your work aloud, it helps you to notice those awkward bits of phrasing. Maybe your sentences are too long and you're breathless by the time you get to the end of your sentence. If it is like that, you may want to consider editing it so it is easier to read, etc. And remember, you know, you can be writing your assignment for a couple of weeks. It could be some late nights. It could be the middle of the afternoon, morning. Like, when you get to the end of it, you don't really know what you've actually written anyway. So it can help to pass it over to someone else because fresh eyes are also valuable in this situation. So if possible, ask a peer to read your work. From looking at it from the outside, they may be able to see something that you didn't and help you to get a better grade. Okay. But remember, you know, technology and your friends are support tools, but you still remain responsible for what you submit. Okay. You don't want to have any issues with academic misconduct. So really, whatever you write needs to be the representation of your ideas and your thoughts. So let us now focus on three quite common grammar issues that appear very frequently in academic writing, which are subject-verb agreement, pronoun agreement, and tense consistency. Now, these errors are common among students writing in a second language, especially when it comes to English, which we're all focusing on here. Now, becoming aware of these three common errors will significantly improve your accuracy when it comes to submission time. Now, we are going to examine each of them. So maybe if you don't understand what the words mean here, that the terms mean, you will at least know how to improve them in your own writing. And we're going to look at some examples as well, which will make them clearer. Okay, so first of all is subject-verb agreement. So this is when, you know, we have our subjects in English. I, you, we, they, he, she, it, etc. And remember, your verb sometimes changes based on who the subject is. So for example, if the verb is work, you would say I work, we, they, you work, but he, she, it works. You need to put an S on the end. Okay. So one, you know, when you've written and rewritten and you've done it while you're tired, you may have missed the S at the end of the verb. This is a small mistake, but a basic mistake. If you're making basic mistakes in your assignment, well, your grader not be very happy with that. Okay. And pronoun agreement is very similar. So if you have been talking about a male theorist or a female theorist, etc., and then later on you refer to him or her and you get them wrong and mixed up, then again, it is a basic error that your marker may not be too happy with. Okay, but it's not just about male or female, it also is about plural or singular things. So if you are talking about many ideas and then you say it later on, it doesn't work, and vice versa. If you are talking about a singular thing and you say those, well, there's an issue there as well. So you need to make sure that your pronouns match the subject that we're talking about. Now, lastly, tense consistency. It can be quite confusing if someone is using different times, different tenses when they're writing their assignment. So if you are talking about the past, make sure that you use only the past tenses. If you are talking about the present, that you only use present tenses. Do not frequently mix between past and present, or past and future, etc. It is only going to be confusing to your marker. Okay? So let's look at these in a bit more detail. So in this sentence here, we have the results of the experiment shows that students improves their writing. Now, the eagle-eyed viewer here may notice that there is a mistake or multiple mistakes here. And what are they? Okay, well, we can see that the subject, results, is plural here. So the verb should be show. Okay? Also, we have another mistake. We've got the student improves. Now remember, students is plural, so the verb instead should be improve, not improves. So we've got two instances there where the subject does not match the verb. And this demonstrates very clearly how small agreement errors can actually weaken the credibility of your assignment. Now let's have a look at that pronoun agreement, which we discussed before. So in this example, it says each experiment was analyzed to determine whether the results were statistically significant. So the subject here, each experiment is singular here, but then later on we've got the pronouns there, which is plural. Okay? So the correct version of this should be whether its results were statistically significant. Okay. So remember that words such as each or every require something singular afterwards. Each experiment, every experiment. So they are singular. So that means that the later pronouns should also be singular as well. Okay. So this is a very frequent area of confusion for students, but make sure that you are not confused by it. All right, let's move on to tense consistency, which we mentioned a little bit about before. So here you can see that the sentence shifts tense. It goes from the study examined in the past to the results show, which is in the present. Now, if you are describing a study that is completed, then really both verbs should be in the past tense. It should be examined and showed. Okay? Because the first part of the sentence seems to suggest it was in the past, results show. Ooh, that makes it feel like it's still continuing. But no, it seems like it's already completed. So they should both be in the past. So remember that maintaining a consistent tense improves the clarity of your writing and also helps the academic precision. So let's look now at coherence and paragraph flow. So what we were kind of looking at there was more proofreading. Let's consider editing on a much bigger scale. Okay. So coherence. Now remember that coherence refers to how well ideas connect together, usually within a paragraph itself. Okay. And if you've had a look at our other videos here, you would notice that strong paragraphs should always include a clear topic sentence. A sentence which specifically tells you what the topic of the paragraph is. Okay? So we should always have a clear topic sentence. We should have logical progression, linking words, minimal repetition, etc. Okay. So let's begin at the start. A strong topic sentence is one that clearly states the main idea of the paragraph and acts as a roadmap. It helps the reader to immediately understand what the paragraph will discuss and how it connects to the much wider, bigger overall argument. You should also be including linking words. Now, linking words and phrases create smooth connections between sentences and ideas by signaling relationships such as addition, contrast, cause and effect, sequence, or emphasis. helping to make the paragraph feel united rather than disjointed. Also, ideas in a paragraph should follow a clear and natural order. So they can be chronological, or you can move from general to specific, from problem to solution, or from most to least important. So just remember that each sentence builds logically on what came before and guides the reader towards the conclusion, which is going to be coherent. Also remember that unnecessary repetition of the same word or phrase or ideas weakens your flow and coherence. So instead, make sure you use precise synonyms. Make sure you use pronouns, that we said before, but be careful how you use them. Or you could try restructuring to make sure that you're maintaining variety, but also making the meaning clear and the paragraph moving forward. Okay? So your writing can be grammatically correct, and that's cool, but you need to make sure that you're not losing marks by having poor flow in your paragraphs. Okay? So we're now going to practice organizing a paragraph logically. All right. So you will notice that we've got 5 sentences here. Now, all of these sentences belong to the same paragraph, but sadly, some silly sausage has put them in the wrong order. So you are going to work with yourself to put these sentences in the right order to make sure that they have a logical structure. So make sure that you are looking for a clear topic sentence to begin. Make sure you're then identifying supporting evidence. Also have a look for linking phrases, for things like for example or therefore. So they will highlight not only to you, but also to the reader, what the next thing is, how it connects to the previous sentence, etc. So again, pause the video here, take a couple of minutes, help put them into the right order of what you think is the right order, and then also think about why that one goes first, second, third, fourth, fifth, etc. Okay? All right, so just pause the video. We'll come back in a couple of seconds. Okie dokie. So your correct order here should have been C, E, B, A, D. Okay, so the correct order begins with the topic sentence, introducing the main idea. So this is about sleep having a very important role in performance. Okay, it then develops the problem, okay, by also giving the opposite side. Okay, it also provides some supporting evidence, gives an example, and then finishes with a logical conclusion. Now, this structure reflects effective academic paragraph development. So every paragraph in any kind of writing in academia usually follows this specific order. Okay. So we move from the introduction, which is the topic sentence. It is then developed by adding the contrast in order to give it more of a context. We then have some supporting evidence, which suggests it. We have examples, which really hammers the point home. And then we have a conclusion, which connects logically with a recommendation here, but yours doesn't always have to have that, but connects to the wider idea. Okay. Now, the little secret here is really, it doesn't really matter what you say in your academic writing, it is how you say it and how you structure it. Because academic writing values structure possibly more than anything else. So a well-organized paragraph should guide your reader, your lecturer, clearly through your reasoning. Okay, so other things to think about are clarity and conciseness, which are both key editing skills. All right, so where possible, use active voice rather than passive voice. So make sure you use active voice, like the researchers analyzed the data rather than the data was analyzed by the researchers, because it makes your sentences more direct, makes them more vigorous, like there is more life in them and easier to follow because they clearly identify who did what or what was performed. Oh, sorry, who did what or who performed the action. Um, because passive voice can usually obscure responsibility or weaken the impact of something. Okay. Make sure also that you are eliminating any redundant or filler words. Okay. These things like in order to, due to the fact that, very, basically. Because markers and lecturers can see that these words are usually added in order to make the word count. Okay. Maybe they help you to reach the word count, but they really do not help you to make your ideas or structure clear. So try to remove them to tighten up your sentences, to make them less wordy, and also help the writing deliver its meaning more efficiently without losing any substance. Okay, also make sure that you substitute any vague or overused words like get or make or do or have, and really make sure that you're using that academic language vocabulary that you've learned across your course. With those precise, powerful alternatives like obtain, create, conduct, possess. These all add energy, specificity, authority to your sentences, and help to make your writing more vivid and professional. Okay? So remember that your academics should be precise and not wordy. All right, so let's consider this with two examples. Okay, we've got an example on the left, which is wordy, and then we've got the example on the right, which is seen as being more improved. Okay, so the first sentence is long and indirect. It is important to note that there are many students who are experiencing difficulty in relation to academic writing. So this is long, it's indirect. The improved one, many students struggle with academic writing. You'll notice that this is shorter, it's clearer, it is more to the point. It doesn't have any words in it that do not need to be there. Those are words that you can use to develop your point later on. Okay, so really notice that editing often means saying the same things, but just with fewer words. Okay, because concise writing is actually easier to read and often receives higher marks. Okay, so the next thing, academic writing often or almost completely requires a formal tone. So make sure that you're steering clear of slang, colloquial expressions, emojis, any text message abbreviations, or anything that feels a bit too casual. So make sure that you're not using phrases like a ton of, unless you're literally talking about the weight of something, which is a ton. A ton of ideas, you could say a large number of ideas. Instead of saying pretty good, you could say quite effective. Okay? Because these are really going to show your professionalism and your credibility. Your contractions, such as don't, can't, it's, or there, these are considered too conversational for most academic context. So make sure that you're using the full form, which are do not, cannot, it is, they are, and these help to maintain a consistently formal and objective tone. Unless your assignment specifically asks for your personal reflection or argumentation, based on your own subjective views, most academic writing means you should rely on evidence and reason and analysis rather than phrases like I think, in my opinion, I believe. Okay? So you for most of your time in higher education, you should be being objective and detached rather than subjective and in the moment and feeling and emotional. Um, Also, using cautious or tentative expressions, such as this may be the case, this might be, it could be, this suggests, this appears, this indicates, or this seems likely. These are really what you should be using, okay? Because they acknowledge the limits of the evidence. They are avoiding any generalization. And they also demonstrate some intellectual humility. You don't know everything. You can't make people believe you do know everything. And also you're more precise when drawing your conclusions from data or research. Um, so, strategies for effective proofreading. Okay. Make sure that you are taking breaks regularly. This will help you to keep a fresh perspective on what you've written. Okay. It can be difficult to think, oh my God, I need to look at 3,000 words again in order to edit it. Okay. So make sure you break it down. Don't spend all day looking at it. Split it up into smaller sections. Also, try reading it aloud. We mentioned that before, but it helps to catch those errors that you're missing when you're reading silently. Okay. Another thing you can do is read it out loud. This again helps you to notice some errors that were there on the paper. Sorry, that are there on the screen. You won't notice them until you've actually printed it out and see them on paper. And lastly, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, make sure you focus on specific areas. If you're trying to find everything all of the time, that really means that you find nothing all of the time. Okay, so try to look at it at different times and different occasions, looking for different things each time. Okay, so having a more structured approach can help to prevent overload. So make sure that the first time you're looking through your assignments, you check the content and the argument first of all. Okay. Then check the paragraph structure. After that, you should be focusing on the clarity of your sentences. Then have a look at any grammar patterns, subject verb agreement, pronoun agreements, etc. And lastly, check the formatting and references. So I suggest that each time you edit and proofread, you follow this strategy because this order ensures you focus on high impact changes first. Okay. So in summary, editing improves your ideas and structures. Proofreading corrects any technical errors. Strong academic writing requires both these things. So before submitting any assignment, ask yourself, have you improved the clarity of your writing? Have you checked the coherence? Have you corrected any grammar? Have you reviewed the formatting at the end? Now, developing these habits will significantly strengthen your academic performance. So that brings us to the end of our session today. So I hope this was useful for you, and I hope you remember these strategies when you come to submitting your assignment. Okay, so I hope it was useful for you today, and I also hope that I see you again soon for our next video. Okay, so see you later, everybody. Goodbye.